What do you get when you combine red rock, ruins, ancient fossils, and native history? You get the Hagen Canyon Nature Preserve, otherwise known as Red Rock State Park in California, located near the small town of Ricardo. It's an almost alien-looking landscape with a unique geologic past and a varied human history. The story of its formation starts relatively not too long ago in geologic time, only about 10 million years ago. At this time, this area was the bed of a massive lake at the foot of the Sierra Nevadas. During this time, sediments were deposited which began to stack and harden, giving way to deposits of sandstone, mudstone, and deeper down where heat and pressure was intense enough, the metamorphic rock schist. Once some time had passed, the lake drained and a dense forest took its place. Rivers and lakes deposited sediments that eventually became conglomerate and clay deposits. Due to the nature of the sedimentary rocks, fossils were easily preserved in the area. Then, around 6 to 9 million years ago, a fault known as the Garlock Fault formed as a tensional response to the right lateral strike-slip fault known as the San Andreas Fault. The opposing left lateral Garlock strike-slip fault collided sections of Earth as they tried to move past one another, which ultimately uplifted and tilted sections of underlying Earth to an angle of around 17 degrees. And then another critical event occurred 6 million years ago when normal faults like the El Paso, along with thin crust and the cumulative stress of the uplifting Sierras and Garlock Fault, caused magma from the mantle, a section of the inner Earth, to force its way up through the cracks, forming dikes, which in geologic terms are rocks formed in fracture zones, and these rocks acted as a sort of highway for magma, giving rise to volcanism in the region. Basalt flows and rhyolitic ash falls occurred in the region, and the mountains next to the Hagen Canyon were also uplifted around the same time as a result between the interaction of two normal faults. They are called the El Pasos. Millions of years continued on, and the area remains a pretty wet place at this time. Sediments were deposited in mass, and animal fossils were preserved. And then, eventually, just around 10,000 years ago, the area dried up, creating the region as we know it today. The varying colors occur due to the oxidation of minerals found within the rocks. The hard red sandstone had a lot of iron, thus making it red, and it also acts as a great barrier, protecting the softer rock beneath it from rain erosion. This is a striking display of geology, but it does not seem like a striking home. But alas, the native group, the Kawayasu peoples, have called parts of the area home for nearly 3,000 years. Their hunter-gatherer society migrated up and down between the Sierras and the desert in accordance with the extremes of the seasons. Other than terrible bouts of European illness that ravaged the tribe, first contact with Europeans was relatively peaceful, and the two groups engaged in trade. That is, until the early 1800s, when conflict broke out as trappers, farmers, and miners began taking up land in the region. These smaller conflicts eventually mounted into an all-out war known as the Owens Valley Indian War, named that for the surrounding region, which was known as the Owens Valley, named for the Owens River, which supplied the area. New white settlers to the region wanted complete control over the agriculturally significant Owens River, which flowed off of the eastern Sierras. After a particularly bad winter in 1862, native tribal members in the region poached some livestock on stolen land, which essentially began the war. This war lasted for 2 years and was ultimately a series of small battles. A war that had started over starvation, a violation of native sovereignty, and the complete disregard for native peoples resulted in the deaths of 60 white militia troops and over 200 Native Americans. some of which who were belonging to the Kawaya Sioux tribes. After relatively major conflicts like this one, a series of backhanded treaties were signed, and natives in the region were suppressed to make way for industry. And the biggest industry near Hagen Canyon was mining. In an area known as the Goler Gulch, close to Hagen Canyon, California's largest initial draw was being tapped into. In 1893, gold was discovered, and over the following decades, mine after mine would pop up in the region. But luckily, Hagen Canyon wasn't deemed resource-rich enough to desecrate. The area directly near the Hagen Canyon, called the El Paso Mountains, were rich in a different sort of resource: fossils. Many different species were found in the area preserved in the rock, like the jawbone of this prong-bucked antelope. In addition to fossils, the location's 2-hour proximity from Hollywood has made it a draw for filmmakers, making appearances in movies like Jurassic Park and The Mummy, as well as the really famous original Twilight Zone film series. Now, in order to discuss how the area became a state park, we need to talk about a man named Rudolph Hagen. Rudolph purchased the land back in the early 1900s and established many of the park's amenities in hopes of making it a tourist destination. Upon his death, his family eventually gave the land to the state of California, and it became a state park in 1969. Today, the area is a recreational wonder. Free roam exploring, camping, and stargazing are Hagen's main draws. Now, this is the section of the video where I usually like to talk about some of my hiking experiences with the area. And much of the all-trails hiking that you'll find in this area is fairly limited, but I highly recommend that you just kind of get off the beaten path and do some exploring. Now, I'm not saying go and trample on plant life, although that is quite easy to do in the desert, but just take some roaming around off the beaten path and get a up-close look at some of these magnificent rock formations. The striations in the rock, the multicolored, multifaceted nature of the scenery in this area is bar none. I definitely recommend going in the winter so you can hopefully experience some of the water elements of this park, because when I went, there was some creeks actually flowing. This is a fantastic area to check out if you want to feel like you're on the surface of Mars. I highly recommend you give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe if you're interested in learning more about the geology of specific regions within the entire world, because I want to start branching out of the US eventually. And as always, a quick reminder to get out and hike, and the links for everything I discussed in this video are down below. Thank you very, very much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.